Let's talk about a few things. Yeah, it is bedlam out there. An uproar or confusion. That's a good word, bedlam. A lot of confusion. And I think that's going to be my major theme is what the confusion is, why there's bedlam out there, and how it's being exaggerated, pumped up by just the stress of the situation. So let's get into it. I do hate to tell I told you so, but I told you so. Couple of live sessions back, I did happen to mention that going into a meeting house or a place of worship, synagogue, temple, mosque, a couple other categories, um, that's not a simple thing. Okay. And I'm being really disappointed by some of the lawyers, and I'm going to call one out, even though I really, really, really like her. Um, I watch Legal Eagle a lot, um, and I like Liz Dye's long form legal breakdowns. She's been a real great. The whole channel's been a real great info source, along with Michael Popak over at Legal AF with Karen. Sometimes when she's not obviously defending Luigi, the guy who shot the executive in the back in Manhattan. She's the defense lawyer, chief defense lawyer on that case. But it's another channel I like watching because I think it's very. I'm not. I was a cop, but I'm not a lawyer. That's why I get on my phone with one of my best long-term friends who is a lawyer. He's certified in a couple of states and in federal court. And I ask him the questions that are the deep legal questions. I know some of it, but that's why I watch Legal Eagle. But Liz Dye had this on Legal. Liz Dye had this video where she kind of like minimizes the trespass of going into a meeting house. It's not a simple trespass. I don't know where she got that from, or that wasn't the part of the story she was trying to tell in her content. I don't know. But I can tell you from being in a court where a judge goes, you trespassed in a meeting house or a place of worship under this statute. What the hell is wrong with you? You Again, this comes from colonial days and even common law that we took from Europe. Okay. Certain places have sanctuary. It's all the places I just described, meeting houses at all, but it's also like polling places where we vote, union halls, city council chambers. Those are the places where you're not supposed to jump in and start a fucking riot. Okay. And I'm not accusing Don Lemon of starting a riot in the church, but I told you that Don Lemon would get arrested. I told you the NAACP gal was going to get arrested. And I told you they were going to be arrested under the Klan and the BLM laws. What happened? Now, everybody wants to make it a traffic ticket when it's not. Okay. Um, the interrupting the service and the close traffic parallel I told you about the other day, disrupting a funeral procession. Those aren't, like capital crimes or anything, but they're treated different than other plain misdemeanors. Invading and disrupting a meeting house isn't a common trespass. It's just simply not. It's not treated that way. And I don't know why Liz Dye was so insistent on, like, well, this is like, parking when your meter expired. No, it's not. Okay. Now, the good news, the silver lining to this very dark cloud is um, Don Lemon is not an idiot. He was very precise in the video when he was asked if he was part of the protest. He said repeatedly, no, I'm a journalist. I'm here interviewing him. Okay. If you follow a protest as a member of the press, the First Amendment is going to apply much more greatly to Don Lemon. But here's the little catch. It does not apply to any of the protesters. None. They just invaded a meeting house. They're gonna get slammed. Okay. Don Lemon, probably with the appellate courts, is gonna have a First Amendment out. The camera person, what's her name? Fox, um, acting as a journalist, cameramen are journalists too, under the legal category. Probably at the federal appellate court level, you're gonna have a quick dismissal. Now, again, here's the problem with the way they went after the charges again is they took this to multiple prosecutors and they went, Don Lemon didn't commit a crime. Yeah. And even though obviously I'm pretty strict, this is coming from an atheist, man. I'm pretty strict on invading the meeting house thing. But I understand that journalists, if they're following a protest, they are not technically part of the protest. And even if the protesters started shit, you can't hold the press responsible. That's like, when I talked about the abortion protest, a couple of decades ago. If they start throwing rocks and bottles at each other, do I get to arrest the local reporter writing notes about what's happening? No, I don't. Do I get to arrest the local cameraman who's broadcasting live? No, I don't. Okay, so Don Lemon and the camera person has an out. Okay. My point in my last video was it don't matter if they have an out. They're getting charged anyways, and they will do anything to charge them. Okay. If you haven't noticed, they will literally not stop until they get the charge they want. Even after attorneys that are working as US prosecutors, federal prosecutors, say no, there's no bacon here. Okay. You're not, this is not something I can faithfully execute in a court of law under the guidelines and the regulations of the Department of Justice. Okay. That's how you got Lindsay Hallen, the bimbo. Okay. Because if they look like Ivanka and a porn star, like Stormy Daniels or the other chick, Trump tried to bang, the other porn star in Tahoe. I was talking about her a couple of times ago. Jessica Drake. Yeah. He tried to pound her too. Uh, that's the only reason Lindsay Halligan got the job. But how the slot opened was that prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia said, "There's no crime here. I'm not charging this." So they removed him, fired him. The judges put him back. They fired him again. They put Halligan in. Then told the judges they weren't going to remove Halligan. To several courts went off simultaneously and said, listen, the next person that brings a document into this courtroom with Halligan's name on it, you're subject to sanctions. And so is she. Okay. So called it. Yeah. Don Lemon's going to get charged no matter what. Okay. The defense of ICE did it first is not a legitimate criminal defense to this charge. If the Klan goes to a black church and interrupts services, it's not legal for black people to go over to the white church that may contain Klan members and interrupt their service. It's not the law is not a tit for tat. Okay, again, interrupting a meeting house is not a simple offense. We don't charge it as a capital crime, but stop reporting it is a simple offense. Trust me, I've been in court where the judge went, "What? You did what so stupid on overtime?" And when the officer gave you a chance to leave, you told him to go fuck himself? Oh, okay, let's go. Let's take this to trial. It's going to be fun. And I told you exactly how they were going to charge it. They were going to find the biggest civil rights law that they could find because they literally think white people are the victims of black and brown and of the immigrant. Okay. They've now talked themselves this. They've talked themselves out of believing in Jesus Christ under the book of Matthew. And they've talked themselves into actually believing 100% that they are the actual victims. So, yeah, what else were they going to charge him with but Klan and BLM laws? with hefty sentences, by the way. Now, I think the only shot that they have with a federal judge over this is maybe selective or vindictive prosecution, but that's going to be hard in this case. Or they plead nolo contendere and throw themselves at the mercy of the court. Because as we ask why ICE isn't being charged by the state of Minnesota, ask why the protesters weren't charged by the state of Minnesota. I looked up. They have an interrupting a meeting house law in their books too. They shouldn't have fucking done that. And lawyers online should not be reporting it like it's a traffic ticket because your meter expired 2 minutes ago. That's not what interrupting a meeting house is in old law. It's not the way it's treated in real life. And yeah, I'm worked up about this. Because if there is no sanctuaries in society, I wrote an essay a long time ago. The Dobbs decision will be enforced like the drug war. Okay? We treat hospitals with kid gloves most times. Okay, doctor's offices with kid gloves may not be in the same category as what I'm talking about with the meeting houses, but we try not to go ape shit in a hospital. I told you in that essay what's going to happen with Dobbs. Once they knock off a few other things and get you conditioned that they were going to use military force and live ammunition because you didn't follow verbal orders, um, that's the Dobbs enforcement, the enforcing to make sure that women don't get proper medical care, and we ban OB/GYN and give it off to all to Christian midwives, the whole industry of baby making. Um, Hospitals are next. If we don't believe in any form of sanctuary, hospitals and doctors' offices are next. Because I one of the things I don't think people realize is the deviousness they are prosecuting the law with right now. The search warrant down in Fulton County, Georgia, to go after the voting data, the PII of residents, not just did you register and what party you register and your home address. No, you're talking your driver's license, your phone number, everything. And then they're going to put that into Palantir and cross-reference that to everything else they've collected on you, whether or not you've been at a protest. What's your credit score? What's your Doge information from Social Security, Medicare, and any grant you ever applied for? Okay. Um, the Fulton County warrant, they've been trying to get that forever and a day. They finally got it because allegedly, uh, this is, I read it briefly. I have to go back and check this, but there's like somebody around Maduro's finally admitted to the DOJ that Obama worked with the Venezuelan government to interfere with the elections, harming Trump. So that's how they got the warrant. Sounds like bullshit, but I wouldn't doubt that's the actual reason they got the warrant. But yeah, when it comes to being surprised and shocked and dismayed that Don Lemon was arrested using Klan laws, what reality are you living in right now? I literally saw 45 posts, and people I respect, people I've been reading them as opinion writers or newspaper journalists or general writers, um, uh, political activists that I follow, and like every single one of them, they're like so shocked that Don Lemon got arrested. Really? You can't see the situation we're in? They're literally walking up to protesters now and telling you, "Why are you following us after being here, and here? We know who you are. This is your name. This is your home address." Do you understand the evil forces you're up against right now? Do you understand that this is a full-blown fascist authoritarian government that sees its own country as the main source of the problem? They see Americans as the criminal, the terrorist, and the military threat. Again, go back to the National Defense Strategy Report for this year. What does it say? China's no longer a threat now that TikTok's in the hands of Larry Ellison and his son. Now China's not a threat anymore. We're completely abandoning Europe. We're completely abandoning Asia Pacific because there is no China threat. There is no Russia threat. Ukraine is Ukraine. Ukraine war is Ukraine's fault. The military budget is going to go up by 600 billion, and it's all going to be concentrated in the upper half of the the Western Hemisphere, the northern half, and the Caribbean mostly. They're literally going to internalize the entire war machine into America. But you're surprised that Don Lemon caught a Klan charge. Why is the awareness level at 2 in this situation? We used to call this back in the day being flat-footed. You're just standing there not knowing what the hell's going on, and we're dealing with a serious situation on patrol. Don't ever stand around flat-footed. Be aware of your surroundings. That's my point. Okay. Um, that was 15 minutes of ranting on the meeting houses and Don. Let's talk about the Epstein dump. Again, awareness level, not high, very low. Uh, and this was a wash when I woke up. I woke up early, went back to bed for a little nap, got back up. First thing I hit, boom, 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 boom. People taking it. I've seen this between Reddit, Blue Sky, and Substack. I've literally seen this at least 50 times this morning. They take a box out of the tip line log. Okay, because that's what you're looking at. I'm not talking about the emails, and I'll address that separately. But people are looking at a tip line log, drawing it on it with yellow highlighter, and going, look, they're guilty. A lot of these accounts are far left accounts. And I'm like, am I literally watching far leftists literally pull a Comet Pizza? Because you've got exactly in the amount of same evidence that the right wing alt cranks had about Hillary Clinton, Hillbot, and Comet Pizza in the basement with raping the kids. Okay. What you're looking at and what you're not looking at. Okay. When you see that giant log form, I have it here on my next tab. Okay. When you see these complaint summary response, boom, 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 there's this really long log. People just keep taking boxes and highlighting it because they have names, And I'm not saying if you've watched me for any time, I don't give a shit who is in the Epstein files. Burn them all at the stake, legally, of course. I don't care. I don't care if Bubba Clinton's in the list. I don't care if Donald Trump's in the list. I don't care whoever else is in the list. I literally do not care. Barbecue legally every last fucking one of them. Okay? But you're never going to make it through a federal prosecution based on a tip line log. These are not the field reports by the special agents. These are not the decision memos by the U.S. attorney. Now, if you've seen those, send me a link. Put a link to me. Hit me up on chat or on a post, on a notes post. Because what I keep seeing is the same thing I've got downloaded. Okay, and I'll use a parallel investigation, a lot less, horrid than the Epstein files. But every once in a while, local PDs will open up a tip line or ask people to call the non-emergency line with tips when you have something big going on. Right in a spate of a bunch of missing persons of minors who are missing persons. There's a lot of criticism that the police were just taking reports and then not following up, just assuming they were out with friends and they weren't really doing any investigations on missing persons. So the state DOJ and the associations of police really came down and said, okay, you got to go, pretty much full Monte every time you get a missing person. So we had a girl, 13 years old, was staying for the summer with her grandmother along the beach. She just walked away. Her grandmother didn't know where she was. No evidence of a violent crime, no evidence from neighbors or any area witnesses that she got into an unmarked 1972 Chevy panel van. Nothing like that. But we did. We searched the little patch of forest near the house. We walked the sand dunes to make sure she was just not sitting on the beach or she had a medical problem and passed out or somewhere. Our lieutenants got on the TV interview and said, "Hey, world, if you think you have any, if you've seen her, you see a girl meeting this description, call the non-emergency line or call your non-emergency line in your city. They'll pass on the information to us." Um, Here's how tip lines break up. If you have 100 calls to your tip line, 50% of them, 50 out of 100 are prank calls. Okay. Is your refrigerator running? Well, you better go catch it. 40 of them are mentally ill people doing random shit on the tip line, just whatever is in their 5150 heads that day. And of course, they'll associate because they saw the crime. They'll put it whatever their fantasy is in with this. And like that missing girl case, we got a tip that she had been kidnapped by the Spanish and she was living with the Knights Templar and outside of Valencia. I go, that's probably not true. That no, the case is only 12 hours old. I doubt she made it to Valencia already. But that's the kind of mentally challenged phone calls you get on your tip line. Then you get 10 tips that are actually worth following up. 9 don't mean anything. They were just, well, I saw this, or my brother's cousin's sister said, and we follow them up anyways, and then they don't go anywhere. 1 tip out of 100, yeah, that's something you want to take action on and really follow up on. I'm looking through this tip log, and okay, if a name is in there, they're guilty. That's what I'm seeing on Substack, especially from the further left you go out. Okay, so I guess we go back and we arrest everybody in the royal family because a caller, and this is in the sheets. You can find this in the output that they released. That basically, and I'm paraphrasing here. The royal family paid somebody, a hitman or a child stealer from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, to kidnap one of the victims and take her to Australia, where she's being held as a sex prisoner. Okay. Um, Anybody specific in the royal family? Because it wasn't like, hey, Prince Andrew is doing this, and we know Prince Andrew is involved in this. That's why he got demoted and shit canned by King Charles. Um, but when you go through this, you see a couple of tips that are just like tying shit you see in the news. It's not an actual lead. And I'll give you an example of an actual lead that came in from a tip line. We had multiple military carbines, assault weapons, stolen during a training exercise. It wasn't the first time some weapons went up missing. So we're all on this. Military police, CID, ATF, FBI, everybody's on this. The task force we're working with locally, we put out the word that, hey, we got missing guns. And the M16A2s are extraordinarily dangerous because they're selector switch M16s, which you go single, triple, or fully auto. So they're battlefield grade weapons for sure. A tipster calls the sheriff's hotline at the detective branch and goes, "Yeah, this house up here on the hill, they be doing shit I don't like, and they got a bunch of cocaine, and they're rude to their neighbors, and everybody in the neighborhood seems to know they're a stash house, but no, everybody's too scared to call you or do something about it. And I also heard they had a a couple of military guns, whoop, 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 and a Cobra. Okay, the Cobra was a coloring. The military guns was a coloring to this tip. They were pissed off that they actually did have a stash house in their rural neighborhood. Yes, they had two of our stolen guns. And that's what tripped off the detective sergeant at the sheriff's. He goes, "Aren't you guys looking for some guns?" I go, "Yeah, we are. Why? You want to talk to my chief?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I handed the phone over to my chief, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, and a Cobra." And we all realize it's probably a rattlesnake, not a cobra. And yes, yes, there was cocaine. Yes, it was a stash house. Yes, they had two of our guns. And it was a rattlesnake. So when a good tip comes in and things get put together because of what you know and what's going on currently on your area of operation, your beat or the region you're working on, tips can become really valuable like that one. Okay. Not every tip because they have a salacious name attached to it or somebody you really don't like attached to it. Okay. If you've been following me for 5 minutes, you know I loathe and I have loathed Donald J. Trump since the 1980s. Okay. I do not like Bill Clinton. I don't like half the twats whose names are coming up in these Epstein's files. I think Robert Kraft is a douchebag. Okay. Another wealthy guy where the law didn't apply to them. I'll get to that in a bit. But um, before you start making posts or before you start doing whatever, even talking to friends and family, understand the source of the data. As a data engineer, that's always important. Where did this data come from? How reliable is this data? Is there any chance that this data got cooked? Okay. When you're looking at a tip line sheet and your association to guilt or your conviction in your mind to guilt is simply name association and a tip line report, okay, your level of evidence is down here at the basement of Comet Pizza. Okay. It's a whole other story if we ever see the 302s, the field reports by the agents, the special agents. We got a tip. We followed up with a tip. We interviewed witness 17. Witness 17 said, "I know victim 3, 7, 8, and 9. I know these dates. I know these photographs exist because I've seen them. And I think they're in the possession of suspect 4." That's a lot more detail and a lot more criminal evidence than, "Hi, I'd like to report a tip. Yeah, name ABC did something bad, and I'm going to use all the names I heard on the news." Click. And again, I'm not defending a single one of these creeps, these degenerates, these unbelievable, disgusting assholes. But if the left right orthodoxy, the political war of partisanship, where our parties really aren't two different parties, they have one goal. That's making sure the money stays where it belongs. Not in our hands, of course. Money and power belongs to certain places. That's what the left right orthodoxy is about. That's what Democrats versus Republicans is about. Okay. But if you're going to do this shit as a political clash and you're going to start posting things on there, see, I told you they're all guilty. See, a tip line said their name. I want to see the U.S. attorney's memo on. No, actually, I want to see a couple of things. First, I want to see the supervisory special agent, the special agent in charge of a region or an office. I want to see their memo on why they opened up the criminal investigation. That's critically important, much more important than a tip line sheet. I want to see the field reports by the agents themselves when they actually talk to citizens, witnesses, RPs, victims, whatever. Then I want to see the decision memos from the U.S. prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, the U.S. attorneys on whether or not to charge an individual. Judy, the witness statements as it are we talking about depositions taken by their lawyers or what I'm talking about, field interviews by the FBI? Do you know? Yes, I know depositions exist. Yes, absolutely. Okay. But my point, Judy, today is they're taking the tip line spreadsheet because they received a call on this date and name names, field interview. Okay, I'm going to go look that up later. Okay, because what I'm looking at right here, and I got right in front of me, okay, is this is the tip sheet and what they what they did in very basic summary, what they did as a follow-up. Like, one of the biggest problems with this spreadsheet that I'm sitting here looking at, um, sorry, half of the entries, phone call is the phone number is wrong. The phone number is false. Victim recanted, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Those are soft-minded people. And I know more stuff's out there. 3.5 million things out there. I'm not saying that's what I'm saying. If you know there's 302s out there, point me to them, please. Okay. What I'm saying is when I look at that list, that tip line list that I have, and you highlight a box from the tip line and go, look, conviction. No, 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 no. Damn it. No, that's not the way the world works. That's not how any of this works. Like, we had a tip line in the Army when I worked on an American base, American fort. Um, it was about fraud, waste, and abuse. And one day I'm walking in CID regional headquarters, and the special agent in charge says, "Good morning, man." Well, hey, Mr. So and So, how you doing? He's good. He goes, "You want to see the funniest thing?" He goes, "I actually had a log this call because the tip line, the fraud, waste, and abuse for just general people ripping off the military or ripping off the federal government, was this whole colloquy about this massive mafia conspiracy that involved murders and buried bodies in Death Valley and stuff like that." I'm going like, okay, I know we're missing a few washers and dryers and refrigerators from the last subdivision build. I'm sure there was pilfering of materials and equipment from that, but I doubt it's run by the mafia and they buried all the witnesses' bodies in Death Valley. I really doubt that's happening. Um, yeah, so what I'm speaking to is, yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there. That not there's going to be. There is a lot of stuff out there. What they are dumping is the distraction. Just like the reason they went 5 times to go get charges against Don Lemon, because you're talking about Don Lemon. What are you not talking about? The Epstein files. Now you're talking about a tip line sheet and declaring guilt or innocence based on a tip line sheet when the real evidence and the real information from the investigators themselves, I haven't seen it. But if we're going to use tip line sheets as convictions now, we're all in trouble. Just like we're all in trouble if we don't believe in sanctuary. Which leads me to my third topic. Try to do these in threes. Um, because I'm hearing this from everybody, and I feel the same way. This is a full court press against the psyche of America. They are doing what they're doing. They've turned up the volume out of the White House, out of the right wingers in the House, these political activists, these right wing influencers, and drooling right wing podcasters. I'm having a hard time now because I don't think many people are taking the situation with the urgency it requires. And I'll give you an example. I watched several clips of the right wing podcasters literally calling for blood because Bovino got relieved of duty. Okay, it's the way they're reacting isn't even rational. Never mind, it falls within jurisprudence, common law, the Constitution, common sense. None of that. They're not even the far right is no longer a rational movement. And my fear is the other fringe is also becoming an irrational movement who don't believe in anything. Anarchy is the answer to everything. I've been very careful over the years because I knew my belief system was shifting. Okay. I started reading things like the Church Report and the Pentagon Papers and a ton of books about Kennedy and the Kennedy assassination, and then Watergate, then the post Watergate era, then Reaganism. It's easy to throw your hands up and just go, fuck it, burn it all down, anarchy, we'll Lord of the Flies this shit. Anarchy doesn't work in the nuclear age, period. If you're an anarchist, you're just a hipster idiot. That's all you are. You think you can stand alone against a nuclear armed China? You can't. Stop being an idiot. But we do have a full deployment of, yeah, not anarchy, accountability. Word, Judy, word. Um, we need accountability. We need something akin whenever we flush the toilet and get rid of the turds, we have to do what along the lines of what South Africa did with their truth and reconciliation committees. We need to tell people either you come clean, you tell us what happened, or it's an automatic 20 years in prison. Because this shit didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of failures that are responsible of a lot of different peoples and a lot of different groups. What the problem is now is a small cabal of con artists, gangsters, and degenerates have decided that if they pull the full blown East German Stasi card, they're going to rule. The fact that they keep like the sandwich guy. They went to 3 different grand juries and it wasn't even close. Okay. You charging a felony against somebody who threw a sandwich that bounced off a plate carrier. Okay. One, it just makes the cop look like a wuss. It does. That's like, charging a felony when there can be no possible physical harm from the battery is just absurd. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, yes, Pamela, thugs and grifters, degenerates and pedos who are just expanding their criminal enterprise. That's all they're doing. And they're using the power of the state to expand their criminal enterprise. This is exactly what other dictators have done. Exactly. But if we're not going to follow any semblance of common law, if we're not going to follow the rule of law on either side, if we're going to diminish what evidence means, we're all in trouble. Yeah. There doesn't need to be any evidence against you in East Germany. The government just simply doesn't have to like you. That's good enough to make your life miserable or just simply just off you. Is that a path where we want to go? And as I predicted, The courts can only do so much so fast. Like, the 10th Amendment lawsuit completely failed. And I think it failed because it's not Texas or Alabama or Oklahoma or Florida's 10th Amendment rights. The problem is it's Minnesota. You're not bowing down to the king. You don't pass the policies in the method that you want to do. If you don't surrender your 10th Amendment rights, you do not have any 10th Amendment rights. That's a problem. That's a problem. The judge was like, "No, I can't enjoin the federal government in this widespread thing." And then they said all the other things they weren't going to decide. And I'm like, okay, then 10th, because I'm sorry, I just do not believe if this case was held in a district that covered Oklahoma, Nebraska, or Texas, that we would get the same decision. If Obama had sent in, or Hillary had sent in, or Harris had sent in troops to Oklahoma, I guarantee you Oklahoma would have 10th Amendment rights. I guarantee you. I bet you $1,000 on the head. But not Minnesota, not California, not Oregon, not Massachusetts. It's all very purposeful. It's really wearing on me is, and I don't want people to panic. I don't want to see a repeat of Rodney King, but with a hell of a lot more guns. No, 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 no. I'm on the complete other side of this. I would like Congress to wake up and start taking actions against these um, confirmed appointees and the policies and the laws that are allowing this to happen. Like standing around and claiming, well, they'll never charge Don Lemon. Really? Really? ICE has more of a budget now than the Israeli military does. Despite the fact the National Defense Strategy Report says the world is no longer has threats. The threats only exist inside the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean, and some selective other places in the hemisphere I want to invade so I can set up another slush fund with their resources. Okay. They've told you their entire scheme now. Internalize all the weaponry, all the rule of law, turn it on its head, and point it inward at the United States. America and Americans are now the enemy of the federal government. But you want to be surprised they went after Don Lemon with the Klan law. Are you going to be surprised when the gal that led the protest gets a 10-year federal sentence? I am not going to be surprised. I am going to be disappointed and sad because I am on her side. Don't get me wrong. Fuck that guy, Ravenwood. If a Nazi's in the church, I told you what I'd done. I'd stand on the sidewalk and go, "Hey, you got a Nazi as a fucking deacon, pastor, whatever the fuck he is at your church. Are you a Nazi too?" Ravenwood's part of a cover-up of a massive pedo ring of billionaires and wealthy people who literally kidnapped and raped children, and they're totally getting away from it. You cool with that? I'd have done that standing on the sidewalk with the church in the background of the video. And guess what I could never be charged with? A Klan law, a special trespass law on the state level. They are trying to take the carts off the wheels as part of their chaos and part of their destruction and deconstruction of America. Don't help them do that. Just a friendly word of advice here. They don't have any policies. They do not believe in standing laws and rules. They don't believe the courts can adjudicate over them. Do you understand the threat we are against? Do you understand that their current policy stance is Ramadi, Fallujah, and Helmand province aren't the battlefields? Minneapolis, Oakland, Los Angeles, Boston, Memphis, they're the battlefields. Again, just like they wrote it down in Project 2025, what they were going to do with this administration, they just wrote down what they're going to do with the military budget when they get $600 billion more dollars. Do you understand the threat we are up against? You have no civil rights anymore. You do not have the right to freedom of movement. Okay. All those flock cameras they told you were for crime were never for crime. Just like your red light cameras was never about traffic safety. They're about a security industrial complex vendor making money and them blanket surveilling Americans. I've told you about this before. I wrote essays about how Big Brother hired Little Brother, your local police. You got cops in Texas going, woman had an abortion, search the entire country. That was already happening before the ICE raids. Now ICE has complete access to all that data, all that video, all those things. They're running it through AI and machine learning, and they're tying every protester and every critic. I'm sure they know who I am in real life. Right? Not just me, the guy using my gaming handle as a social media character. Okay. They know who you are. They know who I am. They are actively surveilling you. Where do we go from here if we don't believe in anything we've built this thus far? That's what's keeping me on edge right now and causing me a fair amount of stress. Sure. And also, as I've stated before, the midterms are it. Either the midterms put a stop to this fast-paced race to authoritarian and fascism. We check the executive power. We start rewriting the laws. We start holding people accountable. We start getting special masters for the evidence in the Epstein file. We get special prosecutors to investigate Bovino and Tom Holman and Christy Nome and some of these jerk off prosecutors that are in league with them. Um, the midterms is our only chance to clean house. We miss this opportunity. We'll be more like East Germany than America by next year. And we're already halfway there. And the thing is, most Americans never never saw East Germany. I did. Saw how bad it was, how impoverished it was. There was nothing vibrant. There was nothing alive about East Berlin. I actually said a couple of days later when I got back to West Berlin, um, or back to my base in West Germany, I was sitting around having a beer with friends, and I was saying like, yeah, East Berlin is like a giant open air mortuary, but the dead bodies haven't laid down yet. That's how bad East Berlin is. Because I'm seeing all the signs. Businesses closing all over the place. The economy's in tatters. We have a federal law enforcement agency that is trying to outdo the Stasi. Here we're seeing things like things missing from the shelves. I told you that before. Bad meat in the meat counter. We've had that problem a half a dozen times. My wife went back to the store with 4 pounds of pork and fucking yelled at the manager. She wasn't the only one in line to return bad meat. Okay. The whole supply chain is already dying on the vine. Okay. Blueberries aren't getting picked. A bunch of other crops aren't getting picked. The authoritarians under dear leader porn star Humper and his band of fucking Nazis. I just really hope that people understand what this isn't a Hollywood movie. There's nobody gonna suddenly give a great speech and go, oh, okay, we're doing wrong here. We're gonna change our ways. There's no Mr. Smith Goes to Washington here. We couldn't even get a vote passed that at least takes some of the money off the table so they get the idea they need to calm the fuck down in the streets. Stop murdering US citizens. Stop torturing the elderly. Stop randomly kidnapping people, figuring out they're US citizens, and pushing them out the car into a snowbank and going, fuck you, and driving away. I tell you what, I arrested somebody and then pushed him out of the fucking car a couple of blocks away. When the lieutenant found out I did that, I would be under arrest for false arrest and false imprisonment. It's happening daily with the ICE agents and the Border Patrol. The fact that they're showing up at people's houses without warrants, wearing masks, carrying machine guns. I do like the idea of a general strike because unless you can hit money hard, because that's all they care about. Trump does not care about policy. He doesn't care about your protests. In fact, he's sitting there drinking a Diet Coke, watching Fox News talk shit about the protesters, and he's eating it up for breakfast. He's loving it. The only time he's changed his fucking tune, like Liberation Day, yeah, the markets freaked. And it wasn't just the stock markets, which most Americans keep an eye on. The fucking bond market went mental on the beginning of Liberation Day, where he started his taco terrorist shit. Okay. He will only respond to market activity. We need some of that 70s mojo. We need some wildcat strikes that snowball into a general strike, but it can't be for a day. I'm sick and tired of this horseshit posting. Well, we're going to take one day, the 20th, no, the 24th, no, the 31st. We're going to take one day and we're all going to get in a drum circle and that's going to be our big general strike. That's not a general strike. Look at the French. They know how to fucking pull off the general strike. Look at the Hungarians when they started fucking with their new constitution. That was a general strike. Whatever horse shit you're thinking of is not a general strike. It's barely a boycott. So how do we get people to understand is if we don't address this soon, like the clock is ticking. If we don't address this soon, the average American is going to be poorer than the average Somalian in Somalia. You're going to be Bangladeshi poor. That's what I'm saying. Because their goal here is to create an authoritarian war space minimally. And the longer and longer that goes on, the longer and longer the supply chains get disrupted. The longer and longer it goes on, less money flows. They're okay with the decay curve. That's what they want. Because then businesses will fail. And then Trump's billionaire cabinet and their billionaire friends can walk up and Start buying up companies, assets, IP on a fraction of a penny on the dollar. They're great with that. Manage decay. Oh, this is how we tear it down, scoop it all up for ourselves, and blame somebody else because they're blaming everybody. Did you see Dr. Oz in Los Angeles now? First, it was the Haitians in Ohio. Then it was the Somalis in Minnesota. Then it was the Somalis in Portland, Maine, in Lewiston, Maine. Now it's the Armenians in Los Angeles. They're literally just sending an asshole from the nationalist regime out to a city. They call a press conference. They randomly pick an ethnic group they want to shit on, and then they announce how that ethnic group has committed all the crimes. And since they're committing all the crimes, we need another invasion. Pamela says, bankrupting the farmers to scoop up the land. That's exactly what I'm talking about. All these crying farmers on TikTok, which by the way are now banned. Did you guys see how quickly not just not just did the National Strategy Report say China is no longer a threat, TikTok became no longer you can speak in leftist prose. Every single left-wing account on TikTok has been banned, their content limited, or their account deleted. Why? Because dear leader porn star Humper's one of his biggest campaign donors now is in control of TikTok. Why? Because years ago, Mark Zuckerberg hired a GOP lobbying firm to malign TikTok and say it was a threat to America because it was competition to his company. Trump grabbed a hold of that as a political play to diversify his billionaire support. He didn't want to give the company to Zuckerberg or Musk because he's already got them in his back pocket. He gave it to Ellison's. So, boom, now he's got another billionaire pillar for his authoritarian regime. Okay. Do people understand the level of threat we are up against as Americans? Our entire way of life, our jobs, our homes are all at risk. Oh, and by the way, none of these layoffs, because we're into another massive round of layoffs. UPS, Amazon, General Electric, the list goes on and on and on and on. None of these layoffs have anything to do with AI. If you post that, I will correct you. What these layoffs are doing is now rejiggering the entire labor cost system. Senior directors in marketing and product management have seen their pay cut in half. What used to be staff engineer or principal engineer positions are now midterm, you know, just leaving entry, going into true midterm jobs at a third less than they were paying just last year. They're going after our civil rights. They're going after our property. They're going after our freedom of movement. They're going after our civil rights. Every single one. The first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the eighth, the 10th. Now they're going after our jobs. Why? Because all the power has consolidated around one small cabal of people that are either actively running the nationalist regime or they're funding the nationalist regime. Do you understand the risk we are sitting in right now? Do you understand the risk pool? Because it's enormous. This is no time for bullshit. This is no time to do something stupid and having just go find an attorney for $1.5 million because you can't follow the law or you think you're exempt from the law. Okay. This is not the time to go out and start making posts that show no evidence of guilt or innocence and claim it is a conviction, and you're using the same tactic as Benny Johnson and the rest of the clown show did with Comet Pizza. We need a better direction here, and we need a bigger action. I would love the country to have a cascading wildcat strike. This is how I think it could happen. A tariff gets laid down somewhere, pisses off a mainstream logistic job role. Truckers, longshoremen, um, possibly even the back end logistics, the warehouse workers, that sort of stuff, cold storage, that sort of stuff. Longshoremen walk. Don't even call a union meeting. They just get on their phones and say, "Fuck it, we've had it. I don't care how much you pay me. We're not taking this abuse." They walk. Truckers, whether union or independent or business owned, they call solidarity. Then the pipe fitters, the steam fitters, the HVAC guys, the carpenters and the electricians and the plumbers, they walk. Because that's how it went down in the 70s. Once one clan walked, they all walked. Okay. No electricians staying on the site where the carpenters are pissed off. Carpenters are walking, electricians are walking. Okay. Then the schools, then the universities empty out. No one shows up to class at all. Okay. And it keeps cascading. Nurses walk. Because what we're doing right now, unfortunately, is not working. It's blowing back in our face. I went back for the fourth time a couple of weeks ago and I reread, even though I wrote a whole essay about it, I reread Project 2025 just so what I'm saying here isn't just my bias. No, if I read that objectively, the risks and the level of severity that I'm communicating here is what we're dealing with. It's the truth of the situation. This is what they intended to do from the very, very start. Because I don't think petitions are going to do it. I don't think calling our senators or writing letters to our senators, because I've explained this. You write a letter to a senator and you're not a lobbyist, a junior staffer logs the subject line, makes quick notes of what it said in the first paragraph, date and times it, initials it as received, puts it in the stack to go get recycled. That's all. Nothing else happens. And whatever candidates we look towards in the midterms, they better have some guts. They better have some gusto, some serious huevos to take actions that make leadership of the far right and the money that backs them fucking nervous. And it's not big enough. We don't have the money, Pamela. That doesn't. I talked about that like 8, 9 videos ago. Um, I can see why you'd want to boycott Bezos because he's kind of an asshole. Um, but a couple of problems with doing a specific company. It's not a large enough impact across the whole GDP of a day, a week, a month, or whatever. It makes some headlines. It doesn't put pressure. It only puts some pressure on Bezos. It doesn't put pressure on the economy at large and the moneyed wealthy at large. Okay. Um, you need to impact. Like, let me tell you what something. Um, I personally boycott Amazon. Yeah, I can see why. I mean, they made a dictator's wife documentary and trying to sell it as propaganda. Yeah, it crossed my mind to boycott them too. Then I'd have to buy Fallout on Blu-ray, which I'm thinking of already. I'm thinking about canceling all my streaming, just going back to physical media. If there's a cool show out there, I just wait for it to get it on Blu-ray. If I cancel Hulu, I buy a lot of old movies. I've gone back to buying old movies a lot, especially Criterion and Studio Canal discs. Yeah, if I cancel Hulu, I'll just buy Rick and Morty and Hit Monkey on Blu-ray. Because I think other than hockey games, I don't watch Hulu for old movies and a couple of the shows I watch because I don't really watch a lot of TV shows. And if I do watch them, they usually have been on the air for a couple of years before I get to them. Um, you gotta shock the monkey. You gotta shock the monkey, not just piss off one billionaire. Judy says the general strike is the only way. More of us. The rich need to be fear pitchforks are coming from. Uh, yeah, and the whole classic adage that's kind of based on a real thing. Japanese kind of snapped and actually did eat some of their rich a couple of centuries ago. But yeah, you have to have this eat the rich attitude. That means, yeah, you don't stream during the general strike. This is what I'll agree with Pamela. Like, if a general strike starts, then you got to shut off your Netflix. You got to shut off your Prime account. You got to shut off Hulu. You got to make sure that when they have to file their reports to their shareholders at the end of the quarter, is they saw a big dip towards zero of viewership. They weren't getting the streaming hours because how is their stock price like for Netflix? One of the biggest matrix they have is streaming hours. Okay? So I'm not just talking about a general strike and you sitting there and watching Netflix and chill. No, I'm talking about taking a hit for the team, taking it on the chin for America. That's what I'm talking about. Getting into a position where you have to do something big. You know, go big or go home. Because unless we affect the stock market, unless the VIX goes crazy, the fear index for equities, or move index, the fear index for bonds, if that goes stochastic and starts bouncing all over the place after 2 or 3 days of a general strike, that's a win. Why? Trump has to react because everybody with goddamn wealth in this country will be crawling up his ass. That's why he tacoed so many times. The real money went, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Okay? Bankrupt casino dude, stop this shit. You're hurting my business. I will literally fund somebody else to take away house seats that support you if you don't get rid of that tariff. That's what's happening behind the curtain. If we're going to do something as a citizenry, it's got to be bigger than what we're doing now. And yes, it's going to take personal pain and personal sacrifice. Like I even talked to this my wife and my eldest son. I said, yeah, if it were to go down, I think we'd go into bunker mode. Other than being up on my Substack and Blue Sky pages, seeing what's going on, I wouldn't even I would live out of the cabinet. I would shop with the food we have in the cabinets in the pantry. Um, go to soup and rice if I had to. Because if you can take a week or 10 days and just cause that big customer drop, and not just at Amazon, but across the board, everybody sees it. It's Amazon, it's Netflix, it's Piggly Wiggly and Safeway, it's Target and Cost Plus. Okay, maybe even some of the brokerage firms, TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab. The next level of money, like above my family, they go, well, America really isn't an investable future. I'm going to move my money to Ottawa and the Bank of Canada. I'm going to move my money to the Bank of London in England. That's a general strike that would go, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's talk here. Okay. Now, you really want a general strike to work? Not just the longshoremen, not just the trades, the schools, and the nurses need to walk. We need the airline pilots, mechanics, baggage handlers, and flight attendants to walk. If we could get a general strike going that included the airlines and included the seaports, both, and then the train operators go, we see opportunity here. Then you're talking about something. And if you don't want to do it because you think you're going to be hurting the little guy, you don't understand the risk of the situation you're in. The little guy's already getting hurt. I'm saying if you want to get out of this, it's going to take even more personal discomfort. No, it's not going to bury anybody. It's like I saw this totally like obtuse post about, well, we can't be boycotting things because, what if the farmer can't sell their crops? The farmer can't sell their crops anyways because of the fucking tariffs. And if we delay his shipment of soybeans for 10 days, it's not going to hurt him. He's got his soybeans stored in nitrogen or carbon dioxide. They're under a tarp. They'll last for another few months. 10 days aren't going to kill him. Okay. What's killing him is the goddamn tariffs already. So, yeah, please talk about things with your friends and their families, your neighbors, at your meeting house. Okay. Like I said, I'm an atheist. I don't go to church. I don't believe in any of that. But if people don't start talking in their local constructs, their local orbit, their local circle of friends, and we don't have groundswell support that supports common sense and the rule of law and the Constitution, um, game over, man. Game over. So looking at the midterms, yeah, be independent, vote independent, run for local office as an independent, stop answering Cory Booker's asks for $5 or some other useless Democrat who's not showing up and doing the job that needs to be done. Stop donating to them. Hurt them. The donations this cycle isn't what's going to determine the elections. The TV ads are not what's going to determine the elections. What's going to determine the election is whether or not we can produce a groundswell or not. That's it. It's not based on party. It's not based on ideology. It's based on what do you want America to be? I fucking know I don't want it to be East Germany. Because every time I think about that, I want to cry. Okay. Before I cry, I'll get back with you real soon. Probably do another essay this weekend. May do another live chat if I get some work done tomorrow morning. And I'll talk to you soon. Till then, stay strong, take a breath, communicate, protest, stay calm, and then let's see if we can work together to get out of this without too much more of a problem. Until next time, please think about it.